The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
All right, welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, where real men don't play. Today's show hovers around a very important question. What are we going to do 2018? And what I mean by that simply is this. We got more problems than Van Camp got pork and beans. And it seems to me that if we start trying to compartmentalize some of these issues, as opposed to just being overwhelmed with the wave of the troubles of the world, there's a possibility that we might make some serious and sustainable progress. And I've kind of been driven to this point by a number of things that have happened over the last few days that are just dominating the news. But before I get into that, I'm working on a project right now here in Los Angeles that has allowed me to do some research. And there's a brother by the name of James Banning. He was born in 1900, and he decided he wanted to be a pilot in 1900. And he went to a school in Iowa, and then he moved to California because the opportunities to fly were non-existent. And it's so amazing when you look back at history and see some of the things that our people in particular had to overcome in order to pursue dreams and to make history. This brother, along with his ace mechanic, a gentleman by the name of Thomas Allen, put together a plane in 1932. They cobbled it together out of surplus parts and became the first African Americans to fly transcontinentally. They left Los Angeles and flew to Long Island, New York. It took them 41 hours and 27 minutes of flying time. But it took them 21 days because everywhere they stopped, they had to raise money to continue flying. I use that as a backdrop for today's discussion. What are we going to do? Marcus Garvey once famously said, "What men have done, men and women can do." The first thing you got to do is accept responsibility for your own self-determination. And as we become, I think, more aware of the immense contributions our people have made to society, it's important that we begin to dig in and then dig out of the many problems that we're faced with on a daily basis. Today, I'm opening up the phone lines because I want to discuss a myriad of subjects, and I'm going to go through some of them. I got somebody on the line already, thankfully, because I did alert some people that we are having open lines. The number here is 323-293-3375. If you don't get through right away, be patient and keep trying, because the whole show is about interacting on some very serious subject matters. One of the things I want to talk about today is there's been a lot of discussion about incarceration. And white people are very good at taking opportunities to the max. And they didn't wait on the opportunity to get one of those state or local jail contracts. They created private prisons for profit, and they lobby intensely. So we want to talk about some solutions to what seems like a never-ending string of problems. Because if they can make money off our incarceration, it seems like we should be able to make some money off of keeping people out of jail. So let's start looking at solutions to problems as opposed to just getting frustrated, marching and protesting. And one thing I want you to consider, let's move away from that song that we've been singing for a century now, "We Shall Overcome Someday." The problem with that song is it's not date certain. And I haven't myself ever accomplished anything without setting a date certain. So until further notice, we should ban that song until we come up with a date where we're going to overcome, and specifically what it is we're going to overcome. Another situation that I want to deal with on this show is how do we reverse the adverse effects of government corruption on all levels, starting at the White House. It's done turned into the outhouse, if you just want me to give you my personal opinion. And the corruption is running amok at every level. They've got a gentleman who's the director of the EPA, the Environmental Protection Administration, who is taking money hand over fist, sticking it in his pocket, and basically with impunity doing what it is that he wants to do with our money. There's several agencies that are just running up expenses, and we always hear certain people, particularly Republicans, talk about the deficit. We had a show about that a couple of weeks ago. And so that's one other subject we're going to get into is how do we proactively deal with government corruption? We already know that we got to deal with police brutality, but we also have to look at it in a different, I think, frame. Because for every black person that's wrongfully murdered, there's a lot of people that get locked up for stuff like traffic tickets and just being poor. We got a lot of work to do in terms of how we prioritize these problems that we are faced with. Another thing is, I don't care where you live in the country, particularly if you live in places like L.A. and New York, you're paying damn near $4 a gallon for gasoline. The problem with that for me is this. We have become the third largest producer of oil at the expense of just doing tremendous damage to our environment right here in the good old USA. We need to not only ask the question, where is that money going, and why haven't we begun to make the adaptations as a people to profit from the opportunities that the extreme cost of gas is putting upon us? We need to also talk about this alleged tax cut. Have mercy. Most of it going to either go in your gas tank or in premiums for health insurance, or I'd like to say sick insurance. Another topic I'd like to talk about is business development. There's some opportunities that we've squandered already we can't get back. Let's deal with some of those issues. But right now, I'd like to see who's on the phone and what's on their mind and if they have a solution to some of the problems that we are dealing with. Welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner. Who am I speaking with?
Hi, this is Joe Hemphill in Cleveland, Ohio. How are you doing, brother?
Man, if I was doing any better, I had to take something for it.
Well, that's really awesome. I want to thank you. They're my first-time caller. Thank you for the opportunity to be on your show. And I really want to bring you some information and stimulation for something that I've been working on that really is a passion of mine. I mean, my passion is really helping people that are struck with poverty. I mean, when I look at what's plaguing the black community today, I mean, if you really want to trace all the problems back to its root cause, I would say that it's poverty. I mean, poor people do crimes, which lead them to be incarcerated. Poor people have poor educational systems, which lead them to not have good jobs, which then lead them to be in poverty. So something has to break this cycle of poverty that our people are caught into. So that being said, that brought me to my initiative that I've been working on. I call it the Paladin Initiative. The Paladin Initiative is an effort to reduce poverty in my area, but particularly metropolitan areas. And we do that by, first of all, if to get out of poverty, you need a job, you need a business, you need economic stimulation. So we need to have an initiative that is strictly built to create and support black businesses. And when I look at what went wrong with black businesses, it's like a litany of errors. I mean, how do you start a business when you don't have capital, but banks won't lend you capital if you have bad credit because you don't have capital? So it's like a cycle. So we have to have a program that creates opportunity for people who are in poverty, who need an opportunity to have a business, but don't have the capital to get it. And that's what I wanted to share with you, my passion, and just tell you about it. And I think that that's something very important for us to be doing right now.
Okay, well, very quickly, kind of outline what it is you're proposing to do.
Okay, well, I don't have any problem sharing my idea with you. I mean, because I hope that someone that would hear it would get it started. If I don't get it started, I hope somebody gets it started. But like I said, people in poverty, it's hard for them to start business because they don't have capital. So what I would like to do, what we are the organization to do is to find 10 or a number of entrepreneurs, make them financially literate, develop their skills to the point where they master the skills in whatever business they want to go into. Write a business plan, scientifically test that business plan with some known business principles, and then price that idea, saying that this idea, if invested into, will give you a rate of return of whatever percent, 10, 15, 20%. Then get a group of investors together to invest in that business. Now, in Ohio, where I'm from, I'm in Cleveland, Ohio, I happen to know of certain resources that are available that will lend to a business after it's been in existence 18 months. So what I'm offering investors is that they help me set up these businesses. We keep it running and get it successful through an 18-month period. Then we pay back the investor's original investment plus interest based upon them being able to get capital from these avenues that are available, at least in my local area.
Let me ask you a question, because I'm very familiar and have a soft spot in my heart for Cleveland, Ohio, because I've worked with Jim Brown for about 25 years. And I know Jim started the Black Economic Union back in the 60s, and they funded more than 400 black businesses back then, and we kind of moved away from that blueprint. What is it about your concept that would inspire not only people in the local area but nationally to buy into this concept that you have? In other words, Cleveland is a part of the Rust Belt. What opportunities have you identified that would be suitable for investment? Because we're already overcoming the lack of trust in each other. And so what is it about some of the opportunities specifically in Cleveland that would override the factors that has kept black people from investing in each other? Well,
self-preservation, first of all. If I could make this model work in Cleveland, Cleveland is the fourth impoverished city in the United States. And that's saying that Flint is the poorest city in the United States at 47.5% of the people are in poverty. Cleveland's not too far behind that, maybe at 42 or 43%. One out of three persons in Carter County are in poverty. So if I can make a empowerment strategy work in Cleveland, in one of the worst off metropolitan areas in the United States, that's something that should be easily replicatable to be recreated in any other metropolitan city in America.
Okay, Joe, in the interest of time, and also a suggestion, people, when they listen, especially in this day and age, they're suffering from some varying degree of attention deficit disorder, and they listen to the following station, WIIFM, What's in It for Me? So right. If it doesn't directly benefit someone that's, tuning in before they tune out, you have to sometimes be a little bit more specific about what industries do you see being, I think, the cornerstone of a economic revolution in a city that's depressed like Cleveland. Do you have any ideas or suggestions as to what a good jumping off point would be?
Well, what I'm looking for, something that the Republicans talk all the time about, but don't really endorse or support. I'm looking for job creators, people that are looking to be innovative, come up with an idea, maybe outside the box or maybe something conventional, but be able to support it with scientifically proven methods that they can implement that plan and offer a return to investors that would invest their dollar in it.
Well, let me give you an example of what I'm talking about in terms of specificity. All right, I mentioned a minute ago that gas prices are spiraling all over the country. What are people paying per gallon for gasoline in the greater Cleveland area right now?
They're paying about $2.50 right now.
Okay, what was it a year ago?
A year ago it was probably $3.50.
Okay, now you should I'm sure you're aware of the fact that there's a relationship between the price of gasoline and the price of everything else.
Yeah.
Are groceries going up? Are other materials that had to be shipped into Cleveland going up as we speak?
Well, the scary part is that no, prices may be actually going down because people don't have no money. The incomes are going down. I read a study just the other day. It talks about in 40, 50 years, black people are going to be broke. Our buying power is going to be gone because our incomes are declining. I mean, so what's in it for the person that's listening to this and say, why should I invest in this idea? Because if that study is right, and if what I'm feeling is right, I mean, your common sense, looking around, saying something bad is coming our way, and that if we don't get out of the way of it, it's going to be something very detrimental, maybe not for us, but for our children.
I agree with your assessment, and I think that article that you shared liberally came out of Fortune magazine, and they said that the average black family has a net worth of about $1,700. Brown people's net worth is about $2,000, and the average white family is about $117,000.
That's so true, yes.
That's already happened, and so as we look at solutions to these problems, how do we impregnate people with the sense of urgency to begin to look internally to solve some of these problems? And I'm back to what is unique about the landscape of Cleveland, Ohio, that would afford someone an opportunity to fix a problem? Because at the end of the day, that's all a business is a solution to a problem. So yes, poverty is a problem, but not in the broader sense with respect to discretionary income. I mean, even if you're on food stamps, you got some money coming in. If you're in the criminal enterprise, you got some money coming in. Are there industries specific to the Cleveland area that we should kind of focus on with this first leg of the journey?
Okay, now I'm picking up what you're putting down. I mean, we're a manufacturing city. I mean, even after the 80s, and the dilapidation that happened to our factories here, there's still a lot of innovation that takes place here in Cleveland. We're one of the centers of manufacturing throughout the country, and who's working in those factories? Black people. So there is economies of scale. We have people that have a lot of vocational skills. We have a lot of people in the health industries. We have, Cleveland Clinic and University Hospital. They're two of the most innovative hospitals in the nation. And we have Cleveland State, which is at one point in time was the second ranked urban college in the nation. So, I mean, there's a lot of positivity here in Cleveland. I mean, I just want to bring some more of it over to the black side of town.
Okay, let me give you an example then of, since you mentioned that there's a great deal of intelligentsia in Cleveland. How about if you actively recruit people that can come up with an alternative to Facebook? Although we're on Facebook Live right now, from all reports that I've gotten, we're not the beneficiary of any of the billions of dollars that are generated by Facebook. After Zuckerberg testified before Congress the other day, the appreciation of the stock in that company went up $17 billion. And none of that's flowing through black hands, because one of the questions that was asked is, your company doesn't reflect racially the constitution of the American population. So are there any young people, or not necessarily young people, but any people doing anything to create a product that would draw off some of that population of people who are on Facebook, and at the same time provide some of the services that we become accustomed to via Facebook?
And I totally understand the direction that you're going. I mean, with the organization that I want to put together, I want it to just be a place where innovation takes place. What I want to do, the innovation that I want to bring, is create a black hedge fund, really. What a hedge fund is, and it's very easy to start. All you need is $100,000 to start a hedge fund. And I want to take that money and say, hey, everybody, come up with some good ideas, and we'll give you some money. And then as I get those 10 businesses going, get 10 more. concentrate them in a local area, and then do 10 more. Then do 10 more, and then offer. If there's any one black thing that I want to bring back a Black Wall Street. Bring back a Black Wall Street and people can bring their money and invest it, and that money is proliferated through the market to create opportunity and jobs. That's the one innovative thing that I want to bring to people, my community. We need an investment vehicle, much like Wall Street, that spreads this wealth around. We watch every night the Dow Jones average moving up or down, but it don't affect our life. But if I could connect a center of investment and entrepreneurship to the black community, and black people could then choose to invest in that, and maybe outside money could come in. I don't care what color. I don't care who gave the money to Mike Green, but I want to put that money in our community and fix the beast of burden that is killing our children. I mean, Flint, I was looking the other day at Flint, where, children are being poisoned every day by the water they're drinking, but yet we're shooting off $1 million rockets over there in Syria where people are getting poisoned. What about the United States government poisoning our children right here in our own cities? I just read that the water in Chicago is filled with lead. I mean, maybe that's why they're killing each other down there, because they got lead poisoning, because the infrastructure in America is crap.
Okay. All right, now I'm going to allow you to leave us with a way to get in touch with you, and people can kind of make assessments based upon what it is you're bringing to the table that way. How can people get in touch with you, Joe?
Well, it's very simple. I mean, my email address right now is going to be just my regular personal email, which is joehemphill@gmail.com, and it's hemp on a hill. I mean, I'm very proud that
No, don't say it like that. That ain't going to get it, bro. Spell it out.
Okay, JoeHemphill@gmail.com. You can also call me. I have a line that you can call me on. It's 216-220-1560. I mean, just call me, give me some feedback, let me know if you think it's a good idea, you think it's crazy, or, God willing, you want to work with me.
Okay.
I'm taking all comers.
All right, that's Joe Hemphill calling in from Cleveland, Ohio. And if anyone out there has been inspired or motivated to pursue something conceptually close to what he's doing, please don't hesitate to give him a call or email him at joehemphill@gmail.com. Thank you for calling in to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, man, and let's go to work.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
You're more than welcome. Again, the number is 323-293-3375. And a couple of things that he brought up in that conversation I want to kind of just circle back to. And that is, sometimes when we begin to try to communicate in a small window of time, we get emotional. And then we don't really just, begin to refine our train of thought to the point where in that little bit of time that you have, you give people a view into your world of thought so that something beneficial can come out of it. I remember a while back, not just a while back, but a few days ago, over in, I think it was Philadelphia, a situation arose where two brothers went into a Starbucks and they videotaped what happened, and it inspired a level of outrage that resulted in them having the people in ownership positions at Starbucks to address that with an apology, and then they removed the person who was the barrister at that particular Starbucks, and it raised that question: what do we do beyond the boycott? Because it's one thing to hurt a company, but does that in effect help ourselves? Give you an example of how we have to transition our thoughts as it relates to solving problems. Some of the greatest beans, coffee beans in the world are grown in Africa. Because we have not been able to establish a trade line with Africa, we missed out on the opportunity. I mean, realistically speaking, what does it take other than a building and some materials to open up a coffee shop that would be competitive price-wise and otherwise with the Starbuckses and the other companies that are out there selling these high-end products to people who really just want to buzz out of some coffee. And I think it's important as we go forward to start looking at every time there's a problem, other than a protest, what are our options? Because sometimes a protest or a problem such as, discrimination along those lines creates business opportunities that we need to be able to capitalize on. And it's also interesting that I did a show a couple of weeks ago and we talked about African currency. And it made me think one of our solutions could possibly be to figure out ways to transfer capital without using the American dollar for goods and services. It's something that we definitely need to look into because things change so very, very quickly. I keep coming back to issues like gasoline and how that affects things. It may not affect things in Cleveland, but here in California, oh my goodness! You go into a place like McDonald's now, for example, you can still get that unhealthy chicken sandwich for $1. But they done went up to $2.69 on them dollar fries. And so as people start looking at how the intricacies of the market play out, you have to be able to think things through. I know that I'm paying more attention to prices of everything because they almost ride along the same parallel as the price of gasoline. So another suggestion I have is to start making our public officials accountable for the subsidies that the oil companies get that are just off the chain. It's amazing how much money they are giving and proposing to give to farmers due to the issue that our president has with the trade situation. Now, he's talking about at this point as we speak, using tax dollars to further subsidize farmers across the country, particularly in the Midwest, who will be hurt because China has reacted in a way that says, look, okay, y'all going to put tariffs on our products, and we're going to put tariffs specifically on products coming out of the United States. So the question becomes, as African Americans in particular, how do we position ourselves to localize our food economy? Because you don't really need a whole lot of space to grow the food that you need to be consuming in the first place, because you got a wonderful yard that you can't eat out of. So why not grow greens instead of grass and be able to turn that same network that we have for moving illicit products like marijuana and other drugs and whatnot, to be able to localize our economy to the point where we control the distribution of food in our communities. Well, what we're going to do right now is take a short pause for the calls. Again, the number here at the studio is 323-293-3375. So we'll be right back in a couple of minutes. Okay, we're black. And again, the number is 323-293-3375. I had mentioned in the first segment, for example, how we in our community have control over blocks in a mythical kind of way, but not by contract. But I'm seeing a lot of here in L.A. Little weed shops popping up, but not too many black faces behind the counters of these weed stores. And I think that's an example of the kind of businesses that we're familiar with in our community that we need to be dominating. But I got an indication from O.G. Portis, who I want to thank right now for allowing me to be myself every week here. Got another caller on the phone. Welcome to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
Yeah, hi. My name's Edna. I'm calling in from Newark, Delaware.
Oh, okay. That's where they go and set up all them really fascinating corporations, huh?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I think that boy, what's his name, Scott? What's his name? Oh, Lord. The president's flunky.
Who?
The president's flunky. Cohen, Michael Cohen. Yeah, that's where he started that service that he provides for Trump, where he takes care of all of his dalliances, you know. Yeah, he filed in Delaware. So what's on your mind, Miss Edna?
Well, you know what? I'm going to tell you something. So much has been happening, wrongdoing geared towards African American people. But has really struck me, and I've been really angry about this, is that Starbucks in Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
The two guys, Starbucks in Philadelphia. Now, you know, I was always told, don't come with a problem if you don't have a solution.
Amen to that.
Okay? But I'm going to tell you something here. First and foremost, my first solution would be that manager should have been fired.
Gone. That person is gone.
Absolutely. But here is the problem. When you open up a business in a predominantly black, or where there is a high percentage of minority people, you have to have minority people working in that business, okay? Because first and foremost, this would have never happened had we had a black manager in it, okay?
You think?
There's a lot of black people that go in and out of that place, okay? And first and foremost, you should have had a black manager in there. In addition to that, some other black workers as well. And this would solve a lot of issues, a lot of racism that we're having here in America, with these police officers beating down people. When you go really look at it, you look and see who are the police officers. Then go and look and see how many minorities you have working in it. That's what our problem is here.
So how do we solve that? And I'm going to give you an example of my reaction to how you laid that out. Is it really the face of the person, or is it the culture and the perception that leads to different outcomes when it comes to police interactions?
Well, I'm going to tell you this. It's culture, for one. When you're talking about how they treat, you mean how the police treat the people?
Mm-hmm.
Is it their culture, how their living culture you're talking about?
Yes.
Absolutely, it's their culture. It's because they already have been ordained what they're going to do when they come out the door. Okay? The first time they hear is the issue with African Americans. They're already set in their mind what they're going to do. Okay? Because the fact is, okay, I'll give you a good example here, okay? I work in the suburbs. I work in a pediatric children's hospital, okay? Now, I know for a fact there's been African-American nurses trying to get in that hospital. They ask me, what do you have to do to get in that hospital, okay? Now, you have the children that come into that hospital from the inner city, Wilmington. You have children come from downstate, Dover, that are African-Americans, minorities coming in this hospital. But I can count the number of African-American females and males on both of my hands.
Now, let me ask you a question. Years ago, before we, became completely immersed in the pursuit of the white ideal, there were midwives. Now, I've heard that there's a certain thing called a nurse's registry or something like that. Are those is that a something that's still a viable alternative to taking your kids to these hospitals? Because a lot of times, if you're not on programs or have really good insurance coverage, you end up in the emergency room. That becomes our first line of health care. So, is there a registry, or an entrepreneurial opportunity for some of these nurses that you're referring to pursue?
Well, the thing about it is, as a nurse practitioner, he or she can only work in states that allow them to. There are some states as a nurse practitioner you just can't work as an entrepreneur and open up your own business. So,
is Delaware one of those states?
No, Delaware is not one of the states, but Pennsylvania is.
Okay.
Pennsylvania is, yes. So, where I'm getting to with this is that, and I'm going to speak a little bit on this because I have some experience with this part with the hospital. For healing to take place, I'm a pediatric nurse, okay? Heal Neil up to 18 years of age, okay? So what study have showed is the healing process, especially with little children, they are afraid. They don't know the difference between too much of reaching out to someone of different colors. I know myself, I can walk in some rooms and I can even feel the racism sometimes with children. And it's all because of what they heard. And that goes back to the culture thing. It's all about your first culture is in your home. That's a culture alone. So it's all about what type of talk takes place in the home. And that's exactly is what sets an individual's mind at that time. Then when they're able to go out in the world on their own, a lot of them don't even try to change because of the fact is that they're so that powerful relationship with their family is you do it this way or you don't belong to this family. So this type of behavior is going from generation to generation to generation, But when we come out in the world and we look at places like Starbucks, we look at corporate world, we look at all these different types of corporations, stores and stuff, you're going to have people coming in there of different colors,
Let me ask you a question, and I apologize for cutting you off, but your profession is very, very critical to our financial as well as our physical well-being. And you said that the state of Delaware, as opposed to the state of Pennsylvania, there's more latitude in Delaware with respect to entrepreneurism within the healthcare field. Because we do have such a high mortality rate in all the different age cohorts. I want people to begin to look at how can we take the skill set of someone like yourself, who works in a hospital for many years, I would suppose, caring for whoever comes through the door. How can we divert some of that business to people like yourself, and how can we support people like yourself to go into business of taking care of our children? And the reason I think that's going to be critical as we go forward is it's not going to be very long before they have finished decimating Obamacare. And the number of uninsured people is going to rise dramatically. And in my estimation, that's going to create some entrepreneurial opportunities because that doesn't mean people still ain't going to get sick. So how do we fill that gap, particularly because nurses, they have more contact with patients than doctors do. So how can we create some economies out of this opportunity in your estimation?
Well, first and foremost, who makes the laws? That's what you're looking at. You're looking at your lawmakers. This is a political thing here. They call the shots. They're saying where a nurse practitioner can work alone in different states, and evidently it must be states. This must be a political thing done within the state because in different states there are the nurse practitioners that can open up their own business. and do not have to work. When I say that you do not have to work under a doctor versus like a physician assistant, they work under a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But a nurse practitioner does not have to work under a doctor. She can open up her own business. You know, so that's a political thing. That's state law. That's statewide. You know, and you have to look at it also is like with this Obamacare. You're right. That I believe that's going to be going out the door after this. So where did we start? Where did we come from? You know.
Well, you know, you touched on something else very important, and that is the accountability of our so-called elected officials. And in order to propose something like this, then we do have to take into account that we do need to either remove the people that would fight change or give them the inducements to follow our lead on this type of thing. So are there any pieces of legislation particularly that we would look at to change the impediments to having nurse practitioners in a position where they could actually hang out a shingle and provide medical services?
I think first and foremost is going to the Board of Nursing. The Board of Nursing is going to have to drive that.
And what would be the first step?
Mm-hmm.
They're
going to have to drive that vote straight into their Congress people. That's the only way I can see it happening.
Now, is the board of nursing, are those elected positions or appointments?
They're appointments
from an elected official.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And each state has their own.
Mm-hmm. So, in the area that you're dealing with, what are some of the acute problems that our children are dealing with health-wise, from your vantage point?
When you say, you mean there are issues that we're looking at with the children?
No, when they come in the door, what are some of the things that they're suffering from? Asthma. Okay.
Asthma.
Now, that's related to mucus, right?
Yes. But let me tell you a little bit more about that. Asthma, a majority of the children that has asthma are living with someone in their household that smokes. Regardless of their say, I'm not smoking around them, I go outside. However, study shows that once it's in the clothes, they're inhaling that.
Okay, well, that puts me on the spot.
And they refuse to put the cigarette down. They refuse. They'll come right in. They won't wash their hands or anything. And they go right at those children.
Now, what about the diet of young children? What role does that play in the asthma challenge?
Well, let me tell you something about a lot of children. You think about this now. If I can't half breathe, I'm not even going to eat that much.
Okay, all right. I'm just trying to expand the conversation a little bit because I'm a problem with the smoking thing because I do smoke. I'm just not around minor kids that much anymore. But my question to you is, though, it seems that, very few women nowadays are breastfeeding, and so does milk really do the body good or not?
Well, yes, breast milk does. And then I'm going to tell you another thing. Study shows that. They've done studies with children that were breastfed and children that wasn't breastfed. They found that, one, that they have a higher IQ and they have a much better immune system.
But in the absence of breastfeeding, does milk do the body good at that age?
No, I don't think it does.
Oh.
No.
Now, you don't think, or are you pretty sure about that?
Are you talking about formula, or are you talking
I'm talking about any kind of milk, because I always was of the opinion, especially since I come into my age of awareness, that if cows don't drink their own milk, what are we doing drinking it?
Okay, because it's mucus.
There you go. And that's attributable to asthma and another number of other diseases.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right on that.
Now, before
but not only is it, let me tell you this, not only is it just, I call it poison. It's loaded with antibiotics and hormones. And it's a killer, put it that way. It really is.
So the health industry appears, from what I've gathered from this conversation we're having right now, is ripe with opportunities to fix some problems and also create an economy. Would you concur with that assessment?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
Now let's go back to the police for a minute before I move on with the rest of the show. Do you think, in your opinion, it would matter if we demanded, and when I say we, I'm talking about not just black folk, or every now and then they'll shoot a white person too, but usually, for example, there was a guy in New York recently who stabbed 2 people to death and badly wounded another person. The police came in droves, surrounded him, reasoned with him, and then when he lunged at them, they shot him in the knees. How important is it for us to, first and foremost, address that issue of the fact that when the police encounter white people and there's an exchange of physicality of some sort, the likelihood of them being just wounded is far higher than when there's an encounter with an African American. What do you think we should do to change the training protocol for all police when it comes to the use of deadly force?
You know, Bobby, I'm gonna tell you, this is it's deep, because of the fact is that first and foremost, as a police officer, a lot of them are scared, you know, and a lot of the people that are out here on the street have mental problems. And a lot of these police officers are not trained to handle these people. So I believe that's why they're just shooting and killing people.
Well, that's kind of where I wanted to go with the solution aspect of it. As we look at what it is and what it got to be, since they're doing that with our money, I would suggest that we start looking into ways to compel police departments by law to, before they shoot to kill. I mean, just like the situation out here in Sacramento a few weeks ago. The young man had a cell phone, and they shot him everywhere except his lower extremities. You know, every shot was a deadly shot, you know, the upper torso and whatnot. And I'm thinking that as we begin to, you know, review what happened, a part of the solution needs to be changing the protocols and not allowing people to be afraid if they're on the police force. You're in the wrong profession if you're afraid. I mean, some professions you just can't be afraid. Now, that don't mean that you don't have that adrenaline rush, but your training ought to kick in, and the first thing you should be required by law to do is to, you know, immobilize a suspect, as opposed to being judge, jury, and executioner. And I think it's important that we begin to move away from the emotional aspect of how this happens mostly to black people, and figure out ways to make sure that we mitigate that circumstance, first and foremost, by making it cost a whole lot more money. And actually, in many instances, it's more profitable if they do apprehend you as opposed to kill you. So you got work to do in that regard, but I do want to thank you so much for calling in, and don't be a stranger to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner. We got room for voices like yours, particularly with you being in a profession where there's a tremendous demand that is ever, I think, expanding, you know, because people are getting sicker by the day in this country.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for calling in, and don't be a stranger to Uncle Bobby's Country Corner.
Point well taken. Thanks a lot. Have a good night.
Thank you. The number, once again, is 323-293-3375. We got about 10 more minutes. And I had mentioned one of the most serious problems we have right now is sitting on the fence politically, waiting on the midterm elections. By the time November rolls around, if we don't begin to look at how to reposition ourselves, whether it's a Democratic or Republican administration, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference who's sitting in the White House. If we don't make ourselves accountable to each other and also have some form of an agenda. I haven't heard anybody really talking nationally about the priorities for the African American community. And that's an opportunity for us to begin to have that type of discussion between ourselves in terms of what's really important to us as a people. Is it education? Is it health care? Is it employment, access to capital? What are our issues that are unique to the black experience? And what do we do about those issues? Yes, poverty is indeed a serial killer. No question about that. But the root causes of that go far deeper than we're having discussions about from one side of the country to the other. And different parts of the country have different issues, but at the same time, some things we all deal with each and every day. One of the things that I look at right now is the fact that we keep hearing about the 1% and how they have, consolidated so much wealth in this country. What are our options to begin to address the impact of all of that money being in so few hands? One suggestion is let's deal with this dude in the White House in a more proactive way, because he's making legislative moves that's going to affect us long after he leaves the White House. And he could leave in the next few months, and we're stuck with this cat, Mike Pence, with his Bible-thumping ass. And I need to ask the question, is that going to be the solution? Omarosa brought that up when she said, man, be careful what you ask for, because this guy right here, and the way she said it, it suggested that, I couldn't even give him none, and I just think that that's an issue that we have to deal with. Who's in the line of succession, and how do we begin to hold our public officials locally and nationally accountable? Because all I'm hearing from the Democrats right now is not them. And then for 8 years, we had to listen to Republicans say no to everything that Obama proposed. And then we had a problem holding him accountable for some of the issues that we thought would have been dealt with while he was in the White House. So in my humble opinion, we had to take personal responsibility for what happens to us and then as a nation. Like it or not, we are Americans until further notice. And as a right, we do have the ability to speak for ourselves and to establish an agenda that's consistent with what will make the quality of our lives better. I'll give you an example. I've noticed that we're having a lot of minor discussions about major issues. And when you talk about tax dollars, let's start looking at it like it's money that we personally possess until it goes somewhere else. They had a revolution in this country many years ago, actually before we were a country, because of taxation without representation, which brings me to the point, how do we leverage our citizenship to experience better treatment as Americans? And how do we deal with that from the standpoint of not just standing back and waiting on something to happen and getting out in front of some of these issues? One of the things that I feel that we have to do very, very quickly is speak in a more unified voice about some of the policies that are beginning to have an adverse effect on us. For example, if the president can drive business to a private enterprise, such as the hotel that he has right down the street from the White House, how can we allow that as a people to happen and not be heard from? Because wherever you live in the United States, you have a representative. And that person needs to hear from us, whoever they may be, black, white, or otherwise, because these kind of things cannot continue to happen without it having an adverse effect on us. Why are we firing rockets at Syria when the truth of the matter is we haven't really shown any compassion to people over there? And now they're talking about bringing a group of those people over there. And I can tell you one of the reasons they want to do it is they have a higher literacy rate and a work ethic. There's a lot of skilled people in Syria, and there's a lot of shortages in this country for skilled labor. The other thing that we need to look at is some of the things that have been put on hold that could, particularly impact our community, and that is the infrastructure bill. That has kind of went off of the radar here recently. And meanwhile, you're seeing all of this money flowing into this country from other places because no matter what happens in the long run, America is going to be a safe haven for people with money. And wherever you live at right now, you haven't really seen projects that have a sign out in front of them saying this is a project funded by the taxpayers, but you're seeing skyscrapers going up all over the landscape, especially in urban communities. And we have an education secretary, Ms. DeVos, who won't even visit our schools. That begs the question, if they don't educate our children, if our children don't get a good education, how are they ever going to leave your house? It's a terrible thing to sit up and watch grown people stay dependent upon their parents. And it affects their lives beyond your lifetime, because that's what we are responsible for, and that is preparing them for the world of work and preparing them to become productive enough that they can advance the society that fell into our lap. And as I begin to wrap up today's show, I want to make it very clear that we got a lot of issues that we're trying to deal with on a daily basis, without a doubt. The other part of the dilemma is, how do we hold each other accountable? And there's some things that I'm working with some people on here in L.A. that you'll hear more about. And I'd like more feedback from the audience that's out there that are listening to this show. If you got suggestions as to how you may know of somebody that's doing something that's working in your community, share that information with other people, because we've got a track record that goes back centuries of being able to overcome adversity. And one of the things that we have to do with a quickness is to infuse that can-do spirit back into our people. I know we've been beat down to the flow by both administrations, whether it was Democrat or Republican, and now we're at that threshold where either we are going to begin to look at models of possibility and best practices, or continue to suffer silently and quietly as they continue to tighten up these screws economically and socially upon our people. And before I close, I'd like to let you know that I'm sitting in a studio that represents the possibilities of rising above that threshold of despair. This sister continues to open up these doors and allow people like myself to present news and information that will hopefully be of value to somebody. And I want to always acknowledge the fact that I appreciate what she does and what she's continuing to do to improve these facilities. And one of the things that we want to do is support her. Portis, is there how best could somebody support the station?
Thanks for asking, Bobby. And I want to say I appreciate you rolling with us over here. You can either become a client by hosting your own podcast, attending our workshops, and we do also have a GoFundMe under Morris Media Studios, so that also helps. So, and then also share the links to your show, get the word out about the studio.
That's what we're going to be doing. Now, as I close, one of the things that I want you to know about us, and that is we have all that we need to do better. The question is, when will we believe that we can do better? And it starts internally. One of the things that I learned from the great Jim Brown is to eliminate the negative, establish the facts. That's the tough part, because the negative drives you into an emotional state of mind. And I'll use my own life as an example. Most of the time when I reacted emotionally to a challenging situation, I made a bad decision. So once you eliminate the negative things that are going on inside of your head, the next step is to divorce yourself from that and ask honestly, what's the problem? Good chance it's in the mirror, because that's the one thing you can certainly control is your own self, as opposed to trying to make other people become what you want them to be. I think it's important that I, as an example of that, begin to work more on what I can do to make Bobby better before I reach out and try to influence other people to follow a path that is littered with mistakes that I've made. But I'm going to own up to those mistakes and ask you to continue to tune into this show, because I do have the blessing of knowing people who are winning in this world, and you're going to continue to meet those people week to week, time to time, because one of the things we need to add is multiple lines. Some of you may have called in and got a busy signal today, and that's one of the things that we want to improve here at the studio. And as I close, I just want to say thank you once again for letting me be myself, and we'll see you next week at Uncle Bobby's Country Corner, where real men don't play. you.